Okay, good evening, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here and to have this incredible opportunity to learn together. So we are now beginning in a brand new chapter, the chapter of abstinence, which is the 13th chapter of Mesilat Yesharim, of the uh, path of the way of the upright. Okay, we've been learning this book. This is our 56th installment of this class, and the first of the trait of abstinence. What is abstinence? We'll see in a minute. We'll talk about it. But what we discussed last week, where we left off, was that in order to get into a frame of mind of understanding, uh, you know, what's going on inside, you got to step out a little bit and look, right? We many times in our lives we get stuck in the weeds, and we don't see the big picture. And what Pious is, this trait of abstinence, is to take a step outside for a second so you can see the forest from the trees. It's to get a global picture, a global perspective. Okay, and that's why we'll see some. Before defining the trait of Pious of abstinence, Ramchal points out a fundamental shift that occurs at this point of Mesilat Yesharim. In essence, the general subject of this book, that of achieving perfect service of Hashem, can be divided into two distinct parts. Ha-Prisha hi tchilas ha-chasidus. He says the trait of Pious of abstinence is the beginning of the practice of piety. V'tireh shekol ma shebiyarnu adata. You should realize that everything we explained in this work until now, hu ma shemitztorich elo adam shlishiyeh tzadik, is what a person needs in order to become a tzaddik, a righteous person. Mikan v'hala hu l'shiyeh chasid. But from here on, the focus is on the steps necessary to become a chassid, a pious person. Okay, so there's a big distinction Ramchal is making here between step one is to be a righteous person. Step two is to be a pious person. What does it mean to be pious? Pious is a step above righteous. Righteous is doing the right thing, being on the right side of what needs to be done. But pious is not only that, it's a step beyond that. It's taking it beyond that level. Okay, so we have like this. The word chasidus, the word piety, the commentary says over here, number one, is used here in the general sense to refer to the stage in which a person goes beyond his basic obligations in the service of Hashem and achieves a deep connection to Him. There is also a specific trait called chasidut, which is one of the steps of Rav Pinchas ben Yair's spiritual ladder, which we spoke about in the introduction. That refers to one of the stages in the general process of serving Hashem with extra devotion, and is the subject of the chapters 18 through 21. Okay, so so we're on page 268 right now, and let's move forward. Okay, v'nimtza Pious im chasidus. It thus emerges that the trait of Pious, which is abstinence, in relation to the trait of chasidut, of piety, hu kemo zehirus im zerizus, is like the trait of zehirus, which is watchfulness, which we spoke about, which was the first trait that we spoke about. Its relationship to the trait of zerizus, which is alacrity. Shezeh b'sumera, v'zeh b'asei tov. For this one, Pious abstinence, like zehirus, involves avoiding evil. There are two parts of being a good person, of being a righteous person. The first part is stay away from evil, right? But that doesn't make you righteous yet. It just is a big step. If you get away from bad neighbors, bad influences, right? You stay away from bad things. That's step number one. Step number two is to do righteous things. All right. So So for this, the first one, which is precious abstinence or is zehirus, watchfulness, they both involve avoiding evil. V'zeh be'aseh tov, while the other, chasidus, piety, and zerizus, alacrity, involves proactively accomplishing good. Okay, they wrote over here actively. I'm adding proactively. All right, that is within the parameters of the goal of becoming a tzaddik, a righteous person. The trait of zehirus, watchfulness, focuses on the avoidance of sin, while the trait of zerizus, alacrity, focuses on the pursuit of good deeds. So too in the process of further elevating one's service to Hashem, to achieve the general goal of becoming a chassid, a pious person, the trait of perishus, the trait of abstinence, focuses upon avoiding all things that can distance one from Hashem, even if not technically forbidden. So let's say, think of something. Is it forbidden to go to certain places that there's, perhaps it's not forbidden to go certain places, right? But I want to stay holy, so I'm gonna, keep myself pure and not do certain things, okay? And not go to certain places, right? Or whatever it may be, right? Even if not technically forbidden. While the specific trait of chassid, of piety, focuses on actively pursuing the will of Hashem, even beyond one's basic obligation. Right? So they go beyond people who are pious. Today, it's not, there's a word called chassidut or chassidim or chassidic, right? That's hopefully it's people who are proactively pursuing that kind of greatness. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they're doing, okay? And it does not necessarily mean that that's who and what they are accomplishing. Today, I believe that there are people of all stripes who are trying to attain that fantastic level of piety. But again, we have to remember that there are these two pieces here. And the piece of, which is very, very important to remember, there's the piece of sur meira, which is staying away from evil. And then there's another part, which is aseh tov, which is doing the good. And if a person focuses in his life to staying away from bad and doing proactive good deeds, then they will accomplish hopefully really, really great levels. Okay. Now the essence of abstinence is captured by what the sages of blessed memory said. Kadesh atzmecha b'mutar loch. Sanctify yourself by refraining from that which is permitted to you. Right? The things that are prohibited, okay, they're prohibited, so I shouldn't be doing them anyway. But how about the things that are permitted to me? For example, eating. Eating, we're obligated to eat to keep our health, right? But how about just like pigging out? Like there's no sin in the Torah where it says you can't pig out, right? Anybody who knows me for more than 10 minutes knows that I love, what is it, Susan? You know it. What's my favorite snack? There you go. Barbecue potato chips. There we go. I see your lips saying that, right? So everybody knows that, but we all know that it's not always good for you to eat, right? And it's particularly, our sages talk about, having a certain level of abstinence when it comes to food, right? It comes to food, not to pig out and not to be losing yourself to your temptation, your desires. Okay, so our sages, that's permitted. If a person is able to hold themselves back with things that are permitted to them, right? That's what our sages tell us in the Tractate Yevamot, right? Sanctify yourself by refraining from that which is permitted to you. Indeed, this is the connotation of the word itself. Precious, literally separation or abstinence, is to separate yourself from these things. Rotzalomar, meaning to say, in this context, Leos poreshu marchikatzmo minadover, to separate and distance oneself from something to which he would otherwise be connected or near. That is, he prohibits for himself something that is halachically permitted. It's halachically permitted, but he adds to himself. Now, there's a danger that goes along with this, which Ramchal will mention later. Okay? There's a danger in adding restriction to what is permitted. Who did that? Who was the first person to try and do that? Eve. Eve. Right? What did God tell Adam and Eve? He said, don't eat from the tree. What did she say? Don't touch the tree. So what happened as a result? The serpent pushed her on the tree. He says, you see, nothing happened. Right? And then it was all out the window, and then she ate from the tree. Right? So you got to be very, 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 very careful that if someone does add, that they know that it's not prohibited. Okay? It's just I'm adding on myself an extra stringency for myself. But to remember that it's a stringency. Not to think that that is now the law. Because when someone does that, they're bound to fall to much further lows than that. So let's see further what he says here. That is, he prohibits for himself something that is halachically permitted. With the intention being to thereby avoid encountering the forbidden act or object itself. Right? So the idea is to put that fence before you so that you don't fall into a trap, right, further down the road. The nature of this separation is not simply to abstain from all that is permitted. Rather, that anything that can lead to a result that is negative or bad, even though it is not directly causing that result right now. And even though it is certainly not itself bad, in which case it would be halachically forbidden. One should keep his distance and separate from it. So what we're saying here, I'll just catch you up, Bobby, I'll catch you up to what we're talking about here. It's great to see you. Is that what we're trying to, what the Ramchal here is elaborating on in this chapter is making ourselves holy, right, by adding a distance from something which isn't prohibited, that you're not allowed to do, so that you have to distance anyway, but from something which is permitted, and from that to just abstain a little bit, to hold yourself back a little bit. We'll see soon, we'll talk about the benefits of it, and we'll talk about why someone would do that. Now, I want to just preface all of this that we're talking about, is that the first commandment to mankind, what was the first commandment to mankind? Anybody know? The first commandment to mankind was eat from everything in the garden. Second commandment, don't eat from the tree of life. Right? From the tree of knowledge, right? Don't eat from that. Right? Don't eat from that tree. But what was the first thing? Eat from everything. Hashem wants us to enjoy this world. We're not talking about taking away basic privileges from a human being. We're not talking about taking away basic necessities from a human being. We're talking about a person who on his own says, I'm ready for my next level in growth. My next level in growth is to hold myself back from things. Okay? And we'll see why that could be important for a person. Okay, so he says like this. To further clarify this definition of Pious of abstinence, Ramchal explains the position of abstinence within the category of all forbidden activities. Consider it, and you will see that there are three levels of action to be avoided. There are all the biblical prohibitions themselves. And there are fences. Which are all the decrees and the safeguards that our sages of blessed memory instituted and made incumbent upon all of Israel to protect against violations of biblical prohibitions. Okay, so first is we have the actual prohibitions. Secondly, we have the fences that our sages placed so that we don't fall into those traps. And he says, "V'yesha ha'herchekim shemutal al kol porush uporush lasos." And there are the distancing measures that are incumbent upon each and every porush, which is an abstainer, to enact. Lios kones b'chsol shelo, right? To withdraw into his own domain and build his own personal barriers. That is, he commits himself to forego some of the things that are permitted, that are not forbidden to all other Jews, to all other people, neither biblically nor by rabbinic law, and to separate himself from them nonetheless, so that he will remain very far from that which is bad, or that which is actually forbidden. So a person can add to themselves, an added prohibition for themselves. Okay, I'll give you an example. Personal example. And for those of you online, not on Zoom, you can't ask any questions here because I really don't see any questions. But if you have any issues with this, you can take it up with me directly at a later time, right? And I can explain my okay. But here, for those of you who are on Zoom, you can ask any questions you want. But I think, from all that I have heard about Sin City, Vegas, right? I said to myself that with bli neder, without a promise, I'm committing to never ever go there in my life, ever. I don't want to ever be there. And I've had many people who said, "Oh, I have this conference. You want to come with me? We'll go for 2 days." I'm like, well, "Sure, where?" Vegas. I'm like, "No, I'm not going to go to Vegas. I'm not going. I'm not interested. I'm sorry, I'm not going." Right? Now, is there a sin going there? There's no sin to go there, right? There are sinful things that one may do there, right? But there's no sin in going there. But that's my own personal thing that I say for myself, I don't want to go there. That doesn't make anybody else who goes there a sinner. It doesn't make, right? It's just for myself. That's my own thing. My own abstinence, so to speak, right? Where I abstain from a certain activity because of my own will. Not because it's prohibited, not because the rabbi said, not because nothing, no problem. There's no problem going there. For me, I don't want to. All right? So that is step one, okay, of understanding that every person has their own thing that they should find an area that perhaps they want to strengthen themselves in and set certain boundaries for themselves. Right? Again, 3 levels he's saying. Number 1 is biblical prohibition. The Torah says you can't do this. Number 2, rabbinic prohibition, where the rabbi set certain takanot, certain guidelines to protect us from committing the biblical sin. And then there's the personal one, which is what we're talking about. It's your own personal thing that you don't fall into any of those other 2 traps. Okay? Do we understand what we're talking about now? Aaron, you good? Excellent. Okay. So we continue. He says additional, hold on 1 second.
Rabbi, one question.
Sure.
If so many things are not prohibited to you, and Hashem wants you to enjoy all these things, if you go into self-denial of something that you normally would want to relish or participate in, are you not flying in the face of enjoying something you should?
Right. So again, the idea here is not to make you suffer. The idea here is to create an extra measure of protection for your spirituality.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
would this
So
be?
I'll give you another example so that you understand in a very practical way. Is there any prohibition of having internet in your home?
No.
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know any biblical or rabbinic prohibition to having internet in your home. But
Other than not turning it on Shabbos, but
correct. But it's not a sin having it in your home.
Yeah.
You don't use it. Okay.
it's available. It comes in.
Right. But if a person wants to take an extra level, they can protect themselves and add an extra level of security so that, God forbid, they don't fall into a trap of immorality, right? Or inappropriateness of any form, right? So a person can take that extra. Is it a biblical prohibition? No. Is it a rabbinic ordinance? No. Just on myself. I'm doing it for my own spiritual protection. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Susan, you had a question.
Well, Rabbi, my question is, would it be sort of like saying everything, things in moderation and nothing to excess? When you go back to your example about food, it's not that you're not permitted to eat barbecue potato chips or to have dessert, but I think I understand that you're saying that there should be, you have to not do those things in excess. Does that make sense?
Yes. It's for
Or
sure not to do things in excess. But the question is there something that I can do that will avoid? I'll give you an example. There are people who don't like going to parties. On themselves, they put certain restrictions on themselves. Is there any sin of going to a party? No. But they say when they go to a party, they eat too much, they drink too much, they get wild, they get rowdy, they don't go. Now, does that mean that people who do go are sinners? Does it mean they're doing terrible things? No.
Yeah.
Right? But to keep themselves and to protect them, I'll give you an example. Okay? I know many people who were for many years have already been involved with AA, right? Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, they won't go to a bar. What's the problem? Go to a bar and don't drink. No. Why not?
Because the temptation is there.
Exactly. I don't want to fall into a situation where I'm tempted. And therefore, I stay away with everything I can. I stay away. Okay? They're putting it on themselves, and it's a good thing. That's what Ramchal is teaching us here. Ramchal is saying, how do we utilize this abstinence for positive, to help us be a tool for our growth? Got it? Excellent. Okay. So now he says like this: before elaborating upon the meaning and applications of abstinence, Ramchal raises a number of challenges, both from rabbinic sources and from logical reasoning, to the idea that it is appropriate to abstain from that which is halachically permitted. Just like the questions you're asking. What do you mean? You're supposed to enjoy from this world, and the Ramchal is going to go through this, right? The Im Tomer, now if you may ask, Minayin lanu lios mosifin v'holchin b'yisurim, from where do we know that we may continually add prohibitions upon ourselves beyond those set out by the Torah? The Torah gives you enough rules. We have 613 commandments in the Torah, of which 248 are performative commandments, 365 are prohibitive commandments. Now you decided you're going to add more mitzvahs to the Torah. That's that perhaps inappropriate, right? So why our sages of blessed memory remarked disapprovingly regarding someone who had vowed to refrain from certain foods. Lo dayecha ma she'asur Torah she'ata ba le'asor alecha dvarim acherim. Is it not enough for you what the Torah already prohibited, that you seek to prohibit on yourself other things? The sages thus seem to discourage the making of optional restrictions. Oh, you're so righteous. Oh, you decided that you're going to, add more mitzvahs in the Torah. Thank you very much. Right? It's not enough, 613. You have to add more. Ramchal elaborates this objection. He says, he says, now, what our sages of blessed memory saw in their wisdom, what they saw in their wisdom as necessary to prohibit and to establish as a safeguard, kfar osuhu, they already did when they enacted decrees for the entire nation. Right? When they enacted decrees, right, there are certain decrees that were already enacted by our sages. Kfar osuhu, they already enacted them. Umashi hinichu leheter, what they have left over as permitted, Hu mipnei shuro heyoso ro'u leheter v'lo le'isr. It is because they considered it appropriate to be permitted and not forbidden. V'loma nechadesh atik zeros ashalo ro heim ligzor osam. He says, so why should we now establish new decrees upon ourselves that they did not see fit to enact? Right? If they didn't see it fit to enact, oh, here comes Mr. Tzaddik, who's now going to start adding new things. Right? Okay. An additional objection. Furthermore, if it is proper for each individual to add personal restrictions upon himself, there is no logical limit to this matter. Right? There is no limit to the permitted things from which a parush, someone who is an abstainer, would have to abstain. If so, it will emerge that a person who practices abstinence will be bereft and tormented, and will take no joy from the world at all. And our sages of blessed memory rejected this ascetic way of life when they said that a person is destined to be called to account before the Almighty for anything that his eye saw and that he did not partake in. So if a person saw good food and he didn't eat it, you're going to be held accountable. And if a person saw great things and he says, no, I don't want to, you're going to be held accountable for that. So why is Ramchal suggesting here, to begin with, this idea that abstinence is a good thing? Okay? And our sages say, so that a person is going to give judgment for anything his eyes saw and did not partake of, even though it was permitted for him and he was able to enjoy it. Right? So we're going to be held accountable for that. And they found support for this idea in the verse. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not deny them. Abstinence would seem to lead a person to a completely self-denying way of life. While the sages indicate Hashem does not want us to enjoy, that Hashem wants us to enjoy this world and not abstain from it completely. So why then is Ramchal saying, it's a high level of piety, it's one who abstains from things? What are you talking about? Right? First is, right, the Torah gave us enough things that are prohibited. You have to add more. And then the next thing is you're going to be held accountable for all the pleasures that God brought to this world that you didn't enjoy from. So Ramchal replies to these objections by first citing a number of sources that clearly support the practice of abstinence. After demonstrating the appropriateness of precious abstinence, he will proceed to resolve the above statements of the sages that seem to indicate otherwise. Hateshuvahi, the answer is that precious ki precious vadei tzarich umuchrach, that precious is certainly necessary and essential. V'yizhiru olav chachamenu zichrono levracha, and our sages of blessed memory exhorted us regarding it. Hu ma shene'amar kedoshim to you. This is what the verse in Leviticus tells us, and you shall be holy, prushim to you. It means you shall separate yourselves from material desires. Right? Prushim means you should be separated. So when it means holy, what the Torah is really referring to is to abstain, to put yourself in a higher level than what is necessary. It's an interesting definition to holiness. The Torah says be holy. What does it mean? Above what's necessary. Okay? Od Amru, furthermore, the sages stated, Kol HaYoshev B'Tainis Nikra Kadosh, that anyone who voluntarily undergoes a fast and doesn't eat, he is called holy. Kal V'chomer Menazir, and we learned that, right? And can be demonstrated by a Kal V'chomer, how do we translate a Kal V'chomer is when I tell you a simple, lenient idea, and I learn a more stringent idea from it. Right? The example I've always given here is that if the doctor tells you not to eat a spoon of sugar, right, and so you instead drink a cup of sugar. And you say, well, one second, didn't the doctor say not to eat a spoon of sugar? You say, what do you mean? He said a spoon, he didn't say a cup. And you say, no, it's obvious. If he said a spoon, then most certainly a cup you shouldn't drink, right? It's obvious, right? So he says like this, from Nazir, what do we learn from a Nazir? The argument runs as follows. If a Nazir, a Nazirite, who deprives himself only of wine is characterized as holy in Numbers 6, verse 8, then all the more is one considered holy if he fasts and deprives himself of all foods, not only of wine. So we see that the Torah refers to this individual as holy. O Damru, furthermore, the sages said, Tzadik ochel sova nafsho. When the verse states a righteous person eats to satisfy his soul, this is a reference to someone like Chizkiyahu, the king of Judah. Amru alav sheshtei agudos shel yarak v'litro shel basar hayumalin lefanav b'chol yom. They said of him that his servants would place only 2 bundles of vegetables and 1 litra of meat. 1 litra is a unit of weight of meat before him every day. And the people of Israel would mock his sparing consumption of food and say, this is a king? This is what he eats? Nothing. Right? The application of the title righteous to Chizkiyahu's name is due to this practice, indicates that the sages approved his abstinence. He had very little quantity to eat. He ate very simply, right? And because of this, he was called, right, a righteous person, right? Amru, Od Amru. Even furthermore, they said, Rabbeinu HaKadosh. They said about Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Yeah. So Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Anybody knows who Rabbeinu HaKadosh was? He's not here. Rabbeinu HaKadosh, say hello to everyone.
Hi. Is Oliver here?
No, Oliver's not here now. Okay, but everybody's so happy to see you, Hadassah. Okay?
Say bye.
Yeah, you can say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, have a good night.
Have a good night.
Okay, go. You take your orange juice. You want to stay here?
Yeah.
Okay, shh, we have to be very quiet. So, what we see here is that, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Who is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi? It's very interesting. He was called Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Rabbeinu HaKadosh is also was Judah the Prince, the author of the Mishnah. Okay, so it says about him, Shebishas misoso zakef eser etzbaosav. At the time of his death, he raised his 10 fingers heavenward. The Amar Golui v'yadu lefanecha. He said to Hashem, "It is revealed and known before you that I have toiled with my 10 fingers, with all of my strength, in the study of Torah. Shelo nehenesi min olam hazeh afilu be'etzba k'dana sheli." That I didn't have pleasure from this world, even in proportion to the toil of my little finger. All right? And what was his name? Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the holy Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. Right? It's unbelievable. Right? So we see that there is tremendous virtue in a level of abstinence. Next, Odamru. The sages stated even furthermore. Right? Before one prays that words of Torah should enter his innards. 1 second. That the Torah should enter his innards. He should pray that fine foods and drink should not enter his innards. Right? It was one of the great sages that he says more than he prays to have success, he prays to be poor. Why? He doesn't want success. He didn't want financial success. He did it. Why? Because that would be temptations. He didn't want that. He preferred to have the other types of temptations, right? The type of temptations that are, when he doesn't have the challenge of luxury and materialism. Ramchal sums up the importance of these sources. Hein kol ela morim beferush. He says, now all of these statements of the sages teach explicitly. Tzorech haprishus ve'achovabo. The need of abstinence and the obligation to engage in it. Omnam al kapanim. However, at any rate, tzrichim anu l'taretz hamorim hefechse. He says, still, we haven't resolved the statements cited that apparently indicate the opposite of this. Okay? He brought some proofs that it's good. It's good, you're good to go. But we still have to answer up those challenges, and he's going to go to that. He's going to reconcile those. Ramchan reconciles the various sources. He says, however, the understanding of this subject is as follows: Ki vadai chilukim rabim v'ikorim yesh badavar. He says, certainly there are many fundamental distinctions regarding the matter. Right? Yesh precious shenitztavenu bo. That is, there is a kind of precious and abstinence that we are commanded to adopt. V'yesh precious shuzuranu olav levilti hikashil bo. And there is yet another kind of precious, another kind of abstinence that we were warned against not to stumble into it. And this is the wrong kind of abstinence that King Solomon stated in Ecclesiastes 7:16. Al tihi tzadik harbe. Don't be overly righteous. The sages' statements praising abstinence refers to the appropriate kind of abstinence, while those statements disapproving of abstinence refer to the inappropriate kind, as shall be explained. So we see here that there are different types of abstinence. There's a type which is very virtuous and very praiseworthy and praised by our sages, and then there's another kind which is not so virtuous, which is not one that a person is encouraged to do. So what is the appropriate precious? What is the appropriate precious? So univayer ata haprecious hatov. He says, we will now explain the nature of the good precious. V'nomar kihine achar shehizbar lanu heyos kol inyanim ha'olam nisyonos la'adam. That is, we will say that after it has become clear to us that all worldly matters are tests for man, וכמו שכתבנו כבר למעלה, והוכחנוהו בראיות, he says, as we have already written above, and demonstrated it with proofs. והסאמס לנו גם כן רוב חולשת האדם וקרבת דעתו על הראש, he says, and after it has also been verified to us the great weakness of man and his affinity to evil deeds. Yisborer behechrech, it will necessarily be clear. Shekol ma sheyuchal ha'adam lihimalet min ha'inyanim ha'eleh, that however a person can possibly escape these worldly matters, ro'ui she'asehu, it is appropriate for him to do so. Kedei sheyeh nishmar yoser min hara asher beragleim. All right, so that he will be all the more protected from the evil that these worldly matters produce. Ki hine ein lahem tanug olami. He says, for there is no physical worldly pleasure. Asher lo yimshoch achrov ezechet ba'kevo. Listen to very carefully, okay? There is no physical worldly pleasure that does not bring some temptation to sin in its wake. Okay? So what happens is that we have every physical worldly pleasure comes in its wake something that is potential sin. And that's where we need to learn the balance. Okay? So the appropriate abstinence is in worldly matters to distance a person from falling off the path and into sin. Okay, I gave an example before. I don't know if it's an appropriate example, but I'm sure that hopefully all of us in the coming week will be able to think of an idea or two where a person should refrain. I'll tell you what. I'll give you an example. I think like this. You know, there's this concept I'm sure some of you are familiar with. It's called window shopping. Okay, anybody know what window shopping is? Window shopping is another word for it. It's called lo tachmod, thou shalt not covet, right? Thou shalt not, right? What does it really mean? It means that I don't want it yet. I'm just building up an appetite for it, right? Which is really a prohibition, right? So while looking at things is not a prohibition, right? While looking at things is not a prohibition, what we're trying to do is bring ourselves to a point where we don't fall into that trap. We want to not fall into the trap. That's the goal here. The goal is to not fall into traps. And that's why one abstains from different things. So if a person knows that watching a certain show can arouse negative thoughts or inappropriate, impure thoughts, going certain places can influence you a certain way. So a person can take an extra precautionary measure of abstinence to abstain from such an activity which will lead to a potential sin. Not going to certain places, you know that there could be people, they talk a certain way. When you're in their audience, right, you might listen to Lashon Hara, you might end up speaking Lashon Hara. So what do? Stay home. Don't go hang out with them, right? So that would be a form of abstinence, a very positive form, so that you abstain from that sin of you abstain from an action that could lead to a sin. Okay? Now, this is a new concept for us. So I don't want to go further. And I want to end here, and hopefully next week we'll already, okay, just like we said many times, that there are 4 steps to learning. The first step is plowing. What we did today is we are plowing in our mind a new idea. Next week we'll be able to put in the seeds, we'll be able to sow, and the following week we'll be able to harvest, and the following week we'll be able to internalize and absorb and consume that information. Right now, this is a totally foreign concept that we're bringing into our consciousness. So I don't want to put too much and go too fast in this, because I really wanted to take root. So this week we just did plowing. It's a brand new concept. And I would love if throughout the week, if anybody has ideas that you're thinking of that this can apply to, this idea of abstinence, I would love to hear it. Because I'm sure we will all come into certain situations this week. We'll say, you know what? A protective measure would have helped here. Or a protective measure could have helped someone else there. So I think it's an important thing that we got started in this amazing 13th chapter of Mesilat Yesharim. And I look forward to hearing from you. To our friends online on Facebook, thank you so much for joining us. Please like and share these videos. You can join us at torchzoom.com. You can also join us on torchweb.org, and have a terrific evening. Thank you.